Hi, I'm Eric Schloss. I'm the grandson of Eva Schloss, and I'm very pleased to be giving this short introduction to Eva's Promise, the documentary. I hope that you enjoy it and can in some way be inspired by Heinz's story. Well, it's quite hard. It's maybe impossible for me to speak for other members of my family, but I guess for me specifically, because it's connected to Heinz, who was my grandmother's brother, who was a teenager, during the war, and then when he died when he was only 17. Um, in some ways, I can see myself in him, having once been a 17-year-old boy, but I never met him, and having been able to connect to his artwork and read his poems in obviously many years later, I can there's definitely like a sort of sadness around this part of the family that I never got to know on a personal level, but at the same time that through these sort of relics, these pieces of art that he left behind, I've been able to sort of have a kind of relationship with him and get to know him, and also what he lived in his short life. And I guess being part of the documentary, as someone who writes poems myself, I think the poems were really a way in for me to be able to relate to his experiences, to him as a human being, and I just feel extremely lucky to have had that, experience, that resource, which I think not many people really do, to be able to know members of their family that died before they were born so intimately. So I feel very, very lucky to have been part of the documentary and have this opportunity to even speak about my family. I think I feel like it's a bit complicated, because I think lots of people were in hiding during that time and will have taken up different hobbies, whether that was things like learning languages or creating things that will have been left for some reason. And I guess Anne Frank's diary, I guess because it is very inspiring, and it is a day by day recounting of her experience in hiding, and she wrote very honestly, very openly. So I think people could be very easily connect to it and touched. And even though it was a horrible time, there was like a hope. I think Heinz's paintings and his poems, it's not that there isn't a hope there, but that it's quite dark, and he was obviously quite focused or even fixated on death, which given what was happening around him, it makes complete sense. But maybe that makes it a little bit. I think people like to feel inspired and feel a sense of hope, which I totally understand. But maybe you have to. Maybe it's harder. It's harder maybe to find that in Heinz's work, and also the poems were only translated within the last 10 years. They were in Dutch and in German, and I think even I myself wasn't really aware that it was maybe sort of maybe I'd heard my grandma speak about it, or my mum, but the poems I wasn't really even that aware that there were all these poems, and there's quite a lot. But the paintings, I actually had one in my bedroom growing up. It was a painting of a boy playing in his bedroom, and it was on my wall. And I didn't know, as a kid, I didn't know where this painting came from, or who did it. And I remember knocking it off the wall once when I was playing football, and my mum took it away because she didn't want me to damage it. And then only later I realised, oh, this is actually like a family, and this is important. But yeah, if you look at the paintings, there's, you know, a lot of recurring themes of depression and death. So yeah, yeah. But the thing that I do feel is that at the end of the day, Anne Frank, Heinz, Geiringer are individuals, and maybe they created things that are inspiring or that people can read or access, and other, you know, many millions of other people maybe did create things and they haven't been publicized, or maybe they didn't create things, but that doesn't make them any less human. So I feel it's, even though it's, on one hand, it's important to tell the stories and to share their lives, to humanize that time when there was so much dehumanization. It's also important not to sort of idolize them, or, you know, they were just individual people, you know, one of a million, but it's like an access to an experience which otherwise maybe we couldn't even grasp or understand. Yeah. To be honest, I'm not sure that the family, besides my grandma, has given too much focus or concentration to preserving Heinz's legacy in a public way. I think it's something which has been really important to my grandma, because obviously she knew him personally. It was her brother, and she lost him when she was very young, and that's a pain that she has lived the rest of her life carrying. But in a way, it's very difficult for us to, you know, to us we didn't have that personal relationship with him, and so for us for me anyway, it's quite strange, because I see pictures of him with my grandma, and I can see the family resemblance in their faces, and possibly even in you know, in other family members, but I didn't know him personally, and it's this sort of strange vicarious experience of finding out about him from these pieces of work. And, you know, yes, I've taken part in this film, but I don't necessarily share his work publicly, and you know, it's something that is more personal for me, and maybe being involved in this project is more like a rarity, more of a single experience. But when I read his poems, and there are a few that I like especially. There's one in the documentary about writing poems, which I think is really powerful. And then there's another one called Encouragement, which I do actually have, so maybe I can even read that. But yeah, I think, as I've said, you know, a lot of it is very dark. You know, there's poems about him looking out of the window, watching the world below. You know, there's poems about watching a bird, being free, and his desire to be free, but sort of knowing that he never would be. And I think, even though my experiences are not the same, I think the human condition, we long to be free. We have all these urges and desires, and even if we're not experiencing the same circumstances, I think they somehow speak to the human experience. So I can connect to them in my own ways as well. Okay, so this is Encouragement by Heinz Geiringer. Behold the man, a dark silhouette, emerging from his heavenly greyness, hunched over, lacking a divine inner spark. He gazes, dull-eyed and oh so uninspired, his mouth open in a pointless prayer. Behold the man, mocked, trampled on, slain, a bowed back, a limp arm, a blank look, empty and perturbed, his body already broken, his spirit too, his vigour sapped by sadness. Is that a man, that pitiful creature? a man of words, courageous deeds, a warrior, tall and proud and brave, a pillar of the new society, muscular and strong, stubborn and wild. Come on, hold your head high. You can do it. Be a man. You are young, you have a whole life ahead of you. Stand up, take pride in yourself. You are still pure. Shed the memories, leave them behind. Forget the suffering and pain of the past. But yeah, I think that one, for me, like I was saying, I obviously wasn't there at the time, but, life is tough in its own ways. And yeah, to read that, it's like being able to draw on the wisdom, the experience of, ancestors, and remember what they lived through, and put into context what I'm going through, and yeah, in some way that I'm a continuation of that of them, and to live my life in a way that can I can remember them and honor them in whatever way I can. Yeah, and then at the same time also to live my life as an individual that I am. I think that's what I find important as well, is that in the poem, when you set out to write a poem, Heinz says something along the lines of, nothing can compare to the breeze which comes your way, or something like that. And what is born in your soul is uniquely yours, something like that. So it can take the message of that and have the sort of courage to live my life as myself, and not necessarily feel a need to carry in some way a burden of the past. It's a very different time now to then. Very different challenges, and as of course it's important to remember, but I also feel like we need to apply the lessons in a way that's for present day, rather than necessarily get lost in just telling the stories. Yeah, I've written this poem. It's called Family Constellation, and I did write it about my family specifically, but I feel like it's also inspired by what I see in humanity and division. How could we be pulled apart, though together from the start? The same shared origin, so it's heavy on my heart. The path to forgiveness is long and arduous, and acceptance is the only way past the arguments. We're asking the same questions, but not listening for what the answer is. I played my role before, but this time I'm in the audience, walking around wondering just where the order is. To me, the solution is here. I can't go on ignoring it. Orbiting each other in this family constellation. I love you all unconditionally, no hesitation. But we need to come together with no more souls aching. The clock is still ticking, and really, who has the patience? Let's ask ourselves, what kind of relationships we're making? Whose role is it to heal? And what path are we taking? No bad intention meant for any heartbreaking. We grew up happy together. Never let that be forsaken. But nobody is perfect, and sometimes mistakes are made. But look back at the sacrifice and all that they gave. We're older now, of course, so respect has to be paid to allow us to walk along the paths that we have laid. The past is the past. No human could have planned it. I only hope we can come to a common understanding. Granted, it's going to be demanding, but look into my eyes, no harm here. By your side, I will always be standing. So it's quite funny because um, in adult life, I've met people um, completely independently from my grandma or anything related to her, and maybe we become friends, or yeah, we become friends, and then somewhere along the line, you know, open up a conversation and about who my grandma is, and they say, "Oh, I think she came to my school," and that's really, it's quite bizarre actually. But it's I think she went to so many schools. She all over the world, but across London, she went. She really committed herself to telling her story, trying to educate people about what happened, and as well, the dangers of the whole process which resulted in the Holocaust, in a way that I kind of am now in a sort of feeling or encountering the consequences of meeting people that she spoke to when they were kids. So that's definitely inspiring. I wonder how hearing her story actually impacts people, because for me, from a very young age, I grew up, I think from 7 years old, I remember going to my grandma's play for the first time and sort of realizing that, oh, this is my family. This is the experience of my grandma and my great grandma, because I knew my great grandma. She passed away when I was maybe about 6 or 7. So I have memories of her as well. But I just knew them as my grandma and my great grandma. So I can't necessarily experience the story for the first time. It's just something that I was always around. And I think, it's definitely, I almost feel like I can't separate. It's just so deeply part of my childhood and my experience of growing up, that it's just natural that my grandma would be traveling to speak about what she went through, and there would always be her books lying around at home. She'd always be signing books, and then I think when I grew older, she would always be talking about things that were happening in the world, political situations, about about humanity, and a worry about things that were happening and what people are doing to each other. So that became so deeply ingrained in just how I think about the world. So obviously my grandma was born in Austria, in Vienna, and my grandfather was born in Germany, in Munich, and so my grandma obviously she was able to leave Austria. She went to Belgium and then to the Netherlands, but then she wasn't able to escape. I think there was a point where she tried to get on a boat to come to the UK, but they weren't able to. And then obviously the whole family was arrested and taken to the camps. My granddad, he was lucky enough to flee Germany in the early 30s as a 7-year-old, and they went to what was then the British Mandate of Palestine, and then he grew up became a man in there, and then came to London. So I would not try to unpick the situation in Israel and Palestine, but the repercussions are clear, obvious, that history is this cruel chain of events and persecutions and violence and division, and I guess that's kind of what I hope for, that young people who watch this documentary can recognize that regardless of what is happening, we are all human beings, and we should seek to find the humanity in ourselves and in others, which is very difficult. It's very, very difficult. Yeah, not sure. I guess one thing which I can reflect on is that for me, myself, when I write a poem or make music or do something that I really enjoy, and then put it out into the world, share it, I think this is a very healing process. And if there's something that young people can take from this documentary, is that maybe, you know, seeing what Heinz created in, you know, in a very depressing situation, in a very difficult and dark time, and ultimately before he was killed, is that the power of creativity, the power of art, the power of finding within yourself something that you want to share into the world, and doing that. I think it's very important. I think that the world seems to be very chaotic. There's so many things going on, and with the internet we can get very easily lost in information and messages and lose sense of ourselves. But I think it's really important now more than ever that young people are encouraged to come back to themselves, to find their feelings, to find their own thoughts away from what they think, what they're being told by, you know, social media or many different influences, and find a way to express that, to express their truth, and know that it's important and that it has a real value in the world. And even if it just touches one person now or in the future, that is an incredible thing. So I would just encourage people, young people especially, to follow their heart, to create and to share that with the world.